you know, the lovely thing about whether you start first focusing on your nutrition or your exercise, when you, I think, take on even just one, you get the positive feedback from it. You get the positive endorphins. You start to feel a little bit better. And then you're like, oh, this is kind of sticking, you know, and then it just makes you want to do it more. But if you aren't taking care of your body, how can you expect to feel good in your mind? And as you say, vice versa. It's just, the impact is huge, and it's something I've learnt myself, and it's a way I manage stressful times, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And I see it with my clients as well. You know, it's just so impactful.
Yeah.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
Welcome to Psychology with a Sparkle, the podcast. This is episode 10, and I'm your host, Dr Dee, and I'm delighted today to be joined by Laura Burke. Laura is an online fitness coach, a mum of two, the founder of Lean with Laura online platform, which focuses on women's health, self-care and postpartum recovery, and lots of yummy recipes, I have to say, Laura. Laura has a commitment to helping women feel their best physically and mentally through movement, nourishment and mindfulness. So welcome to the podcast, Laura.
Thank you so much, Dee. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Lovely to have you here. Absolutely thrilled. And we were just chatting earlier before we went live about, I suppose I have a huge interest in exercise in general, but more so, I suppose, as it relates to mental health.
Yeah. And
I've written a chapter in my book for anyone who's read it, in Psychology with a Sparkle, around, I think it's chapter 3 actually, exercise, body image and life trajectories. And I suppose it's something that I've always exercised my whole life. But since becoming a psychologist, I've really started to see, I suppose, the interconnectedness between, you know, mind and body, and how much, you know, that connection is so important.
It's huge.
So on that note, Laura, and before we kind of get really stuck into things, I want you to maybe introduce yourself to the listeners and let them know. I know you're from Dublin originally.
Yeah. So so thank you. I'm from Dublin originally, and I moved to Galway about 10 years ago, which I can't believe. Every time someone asks me, I kind of, you know, say, about 6 years, and then I actually kind of add up the numbers. I'm like, where did that time go? Moved to Galway about 10 years ago, and I trained as a PT in 2019, and that was obviously pre-COVID. So it was a crazy time. I was working my office job. I was kind of trying to PT clients in the morning, in the evening, completely burning myself out, unbeknownst to myself. You know, you just think, oh, this is great. Just keep going. Like absolute madness looking back. And then COVID hit, and I had to slow it all down. And naturally then clients started reaching out, just saying, I, you know, knew you from the gym, and I'm stuck at home. What can I do? Fantastic. And I started generating plans for them at home. And at the same time, I'd started my Instagram page. So it all just kind of happened together. But it was never the intentional way I was going to go with that business necessarily straight off the bat, let's say.
Sure.
And then, it just grew from there, you know. It's great because I myself obviously love training and like that for my head more than anything. It keeps me sane, you know. And when people always say, how do you stay so motivated and so consistent? I'm like, it's literally keeps me sane.
100%.
So it's great to be able to share that with people and show how achievable it can be, because I don't go to a gym anymore for an hour and a half at a time. It is short workouts at home. And I've actually continued that since COVID. It's accessible to everyone. That's the point I'm always trying to get across to people, you know.
And you even train with your two little children.
Yes, swinging out of me sometimes, and it is very frustrating. But, you know, you just get it done. Learning to be flexible is something I've really had to adapt to since having kids. But it's just like that. Once I get it done, I feel so much better.
Absolutely.
You know, your mood shifts instantly.
100%.
Yeah, instantly.
100%. So we'll come back to, because I want to kind of tap into as well, and I know you do lots of kind of really, as we were saying, like for people, non-domesticated people like me, really, you know, quick, short, but really super yummy recipes. So hopefully we'll get to chat about that a little bit later as well.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to focus on now, Laura, is, I suppose, I know you're a huge proponent, similar to myself, around the whole concept of healthy body, healthy mind.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, it works both ways.
Yeah.
You know, that you can't actually separate the two. And in fact, I came across a clip yesterday on Instagram of Dr. Gabor Mate.
I
And
love
he was
him.
speaking, he's brilliant.
He's amazing.
Yeah. But he was speaking about like something like 2,400 years ago, Socrates, the Greek philosopher, that he stated at that time, all those years ago, he stated that the problem with doctors of today, back 2,400 years ago, is that they separate the mind from the body, but that the two are so intricately linked.
Yeah.
It's not possible, and you can't expect to have a healthy mind if you don't look after your body, and similarly, if you don't, look after your mind, your body is going to suffer the effects of that too.
100%. Like they are so intrinsically linked. And I think that's, the lovely thing about whether you start first focusing on your nutrition or your exercise, when you, I think, take on even just one, you get the positive feedback from it. You get the positive endorphins. You start to feel a little bit better. And then you're like, oh, this is kind of sticking, and then it just makes you want to do it more. But if you aren't taking care of your body, how can you expect to feel good in your mind? And
Absolutely.
as you say, vice versa, it's just, the impact is huge. And it's something I've learned myself, and it's a way I manage stressful times, anxiety, all that kind of stuff. And I see it with my clients as well. It's just so impactful.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so passionate about the kind of movement piece, or, the type of training I enjoy is resistance training and all that kind of good stuff, because I feel so many people would recognize yoga and meditation with that calming, de-stressor. But I am not a slow person. I am frantic. Like I just am go, go, go. And I've always struggled with slowing down. And to me, if you ask me to sit in a mat and breathe for 10 minutes, I really struggle with that. Whereas if I can like pound it out and sweat it out, then to me, that's my meditation.
Yeah.
So I think as well, it's just to show people that no matter what way you enjoy doing things, there's an answer for you. Do you know?
Absolutely. And that it can be active meditation, as you say. It doesn't have to be sitting on a rock, at the side of a mountain.
Exactly. Yeah. And it brings you back to now. Because if you're, if you are doing just, say, for example, strength training, you're counting reps, you're counting sets, you're in the moment.
Exactly.
So, and of course your mind starts to wander, but you pull yourself back. So you're like, okay, what's the next exercise? So it's bringing you back to the now. So
100%.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the actual impact of foods and particular foods on our, well, firstly, I suppose one of the things that I talk a lot about when I'm working with clients is brain health.
Yes.
But people actually don't realise the impact that foods have, the wrong foods have on our brain health.
Yeah.
And there's been like a ton of research to back this up, in that like really fatty foods, like way too much alcohol, all that, it actually clogs up the brain in the sense that, I suppose the frontal parts, the prefrontal cortex, that's like I always say, it's like the CEO of the brain.
Yeah.
But if the connection between that and the amygdala, which is the emotional part of the brain, if that becomes in any way disrupted, which the likes of fatty foods, over-processed foods, a lot of stress in our lives, that all affects that connection. And that then has a direct impact on our decision-making ability, because this is the part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex is responsible for good decision-making.
Yeah.
So if we're clogging up our brains with too much stress, too much stimulation, whether it's like being online too often, and a really bad diet, it's not just the impact that has on our bodies, it's also the impact that it has on our mind hygiene.
Without question.
Yeah.
Like without question. And this is something that I'm looking at more and trying to get better about myself even, is that food choice piece. Because I'm the first one to say balance, and I would always encourage that with my clients as well. If you kind of go too restrictive with anything, it's just hard work, and no one wants that, and we have to feel like we can enjoy life and have all the good things. But to your point, there is so much research now to say that high sugar foods, high processed foods, all that kind of stuff is not only detrimental to, hanging on to body fat and all that kind of stuff, but our mental health. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice to a degree to not recognise that, and to not maybe talk about that a bit more. And, I was saying to you before we were recording, like there's always a debate around good and bad foods and labelling good and bad foods. And we can see a lot of things online of people saying we shouldn't say good and bad foods because then it's nearly
a good point about that.
Yeah, it's nearly like, I think people's fear around that is it's kind of guilt inducing, but I think that's us nearly just pretending they don't exist to a degree. You know, I think there's no harm with the education piece of knowing what's good and bad for us, and then we make the decisions around it. No more than, I know alcohol is not good for me, but I still drink occasionally.
Absolutely.
Not often, but I do. You know, or like the example I gave earlier, like we all know now cigarettes are bad for us, or so more often than not now people choose not to smoke, but there was a time we all thought it was great. So, you know, there's so it's just that education piece of knowing what foods are poor, and then if you decide to eat them, grand. And I eat junk food, you know, I have a takeaway here and there and all the rest. I'm certainly not perfect when it comes to my diet.
But which you're very open about on your account. Like, that's one of the lovely things actually about your online presence is that you don't kind of sugarcoat, or you don't try and make yourself out to be this like super healthy, like 7 days a week, that you have no off days, because that's not true to life.
No.
The reality is, like, we're never going to have the perfect diet, or, you know, well, at least I certainly don't.
No.
You know? So it's about, like, you know, what you can have in moderation and kind of finding a balance for yourself that works.
Exactly, yeah. And I don't have a perfect diet 7 days a week. I wish I did, you know, but I don't. And it's just about always kind of coming back to what can I improve on, and that's all often what I do with my clients. I say to them, if they come to me for one-to-one coaching, we typically do a 6-week block.
Yeah.
And I say, you know, in 6 weeks you'll get results, you'll see changes. But you're not just, there's not, you know, a magic pill that for the rest of time you're going to abide by these, you know, guidelines or toolkit. You constantly have to work at it. And that's life. And it's recognizing that and accepting that and just saying, right, this was a bad week. I'm not going to let it fall into a month. I'm going to get up now tomorrow, make the changes, implement what I know and try and do better, you know. So,
and that is kind of the key piece, Laura, isn't it? It's kind of like recognizing, not like, you know, kind of beating yourself with a big stick about, oh, you know, I had a takeaway last night.
Yeah.
Just getting on with it.
Exactly.
Just, you know, going back to
and getting back to exactly.
Yeah.
You said it. You're normal, because we, you know, and I think we're desperate as women. We fall into that trap then of, oh God, I had the takeaway and I had the pack of biscuits and the crisps and the wine, so I'm just going to starve myself tomorrow. That's the worst thing we can do, you know. And then inevitably you're going to lean into that kind of binge restrict pattern, which we see so often, and we've probably all fallen accustomed to at one point or another in our lives. And you just want to get back to your normal, because then your body's not being starved of kind of its key nutrients, or it's not left wanting more, you know, to get the balance back. And then you're less likely to want to have the bad stuff again, you know.
Exactly. And I think that piece actually is really important that you just highlighted there, Laura, around the whole restrictive thing, and that if you become, that's another reason, you know, I suppose, to have some kind of a regularity, I suppose, in as much as possible, because you're less likely to kind of go for really long periods of time without eating and then overcompensating on the other side.
Exactly.
You know, that you have more of a balance around, okay, well, I feel a bit weak now, so I also need to eat.
Yeah. And I have to say, and people are shocked when they hear this, but the people that come to me, like 9 times out of 10, their issue is not that they are overeating. They are dramatically undereating.
Okay.
And as women, I think we're so bad at that, because we're all so busy. Life is busy. You know, no matter what you're doing, we're all just running. You know, we are.
Yeah.
And we are the last to prioritise ourselves, and we're just kind of getting all the jobs done, life tasks done, and we kind of put ourselves to the bottom of the pile. So we're kind of just snacking on the fly, barely have a lunch, barely have a breakfast, you know, maybe have a dinner. And then of course in the evening time you're starving and you want to pick at sugary things, you know, but more often than not, it is that under-eating piece, and it's unintentional. You know, it's not even that someone is making the conscious decision that I'm going to stick to a 1,000-calorie diet or whatever the case may be. They are just unintentionally under-eating. And then when we flip that, the difference they see, not only do they finally see progress in their, you know, weight loss journey, or if whatever the goal is, if they want to lean up and tone up and build muscle mass, but they feel better, their mood is regulated, they're sleeping better, the cravings reduce, you know, so it's all that good stuff. So I'm a huge believer in, no matter what the goal is, even if it is weight loss and we need to put someone in a calorie deficit, it's done in a very conscious way, that it's not restrictive and leave someone feeling hungry. And, you know, that's just the worst thing we can do.
Exactly. And just, I suppose, on that, Laura, because it is kind of a topic of discussion around the whole protein intake and hitting your protein markers. Like, do you buy into all of that, or do you think it is really important to
Yeah,
protein
I do and I don't. But I know, and I'll tell you why. When I first heard of the whole kind of macronutrient concept, so our proteins, fats and carbohydrates, I thought, oh, sure, this is bodybuilding stuff. You know, when I sat in my PT course and we got to the macro stage, I thought, oh, here now, this, you know, I'm sick of hearing about this.
Yeah.
This isn't for me. But actually, what it is I think we probably overcomplicate it to a degree. It's just about understanding the right mix of food we need in the diet. And sadly, we probably do hear too much about protein. It is 100% needed. And it's not that it's the most important. Like our macronutrients are giant nutrients for a reason. We need all three. They are equally as important. But we talk about protein the most because it's the hardest one to achieve through our food. And typically as a nation, you know, we don't eat enough and it is kind of hard to consume. So if the goal, again, for example, would be to build lean muscle mass, which in turn burns body fat. So that's always the first thing we'd look to do for someone if their goals are to lose weight and or tone up.
Yeah.
Trying to get enough protein in the diet is always a challenge. But you have to be careful that's not at the detriment to your fats and carbohydrates.
Okay.
It's just about getting the right split. So it can be overwhelming for someone and it can seem very complicated. But when you actually break it down, it's not hard, you know.
So is there kind of a rule of thumb? Because I know like it used to be kind of like the palm of your hand, so that's enough protein like per meal.
Yeah.
Is that still the case or is there more? Or
I always say to people, well, if I'm working closely with a client, I would ask them to track their food, but only as a toolkit for us to understand, like, where are we at? What's our baseline? Because you can't improve something when you don't know what the baseline is.
Yeah.
But I always say to someone, we're going to use this to collect data, you know, make the changes, and then we're going to park it and move on and just go with, you know, eyeball things, eat intuitively, all that kind of good stuff, because you don't want to be tracking for the rest of the time. It can become obsessive and it's a pain in the ass, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're not at that degree and you just don't want to go there, I would then say to someone, just ask yourself the simple question at every meal or snack, what is the protein source? So, you know, at your breakfast, if you're having oats, like I love porridge, I love my sweet breakfast.
Breakfast bar.
Yeah. So so you're on the sweet train like me at breakfast time. So if I'm having my bowl of oats, that is a carbohydrate. Now there's a small amount of protein in oats, but it's not significant, right? So I need to then say, well, what can I add to this to increase the protein content? So I would often add, if it's not a scoop of actual protein powder, and I would take protein powder a lot because I personally struggle to achieve enough protein through my diet, I might do something like a big dollop of skyr yogurt or low-fat Greek yogurt. So that's going to have a nice bit of protein in there, and just pop it on top, and it makes your oats really creamy. And then I would get, you know, my healthy fat source in there. So like a small teaspoon of almond butter or peanut butter, exactly. And again, they house a bit of protein in them. So the cumulative effect of that is you've got a little bit from your oats, a little bit from your almond or your nut butter, whatever your choice is. But the main thing there would be your yogurt, giving you the kind of protein in that. So it's about just asking yourself that question. And, you know, I think as Irish people, we're really good at dinner. Like we always have, you know, a protein with a veg and a potato or whatever. But it's kind of people struggle breakfast, lunches and snacks. Snacks is very hard. Snacks is because, you know, to your point, it's the protein bars or the kind of sugary snacks or like in food or shops in Ireland, like if you're, you know, traveling a lot, if you're on the road a lot, you stop in if you stop in a petrol station, like what are your choices? You know, we're really limited. So in those moments, it's fine to have the protein bar, whatever the case may be. It's better than, you know, a Mars bar, something really sugary, but they're not the things we should probably lean on all the time, you know. So
again, it's back to that balance piece, isn't it?
I know, and preparation ideally, but again, that's not always realistic for people. And I'm just always trying to bring it back to, like, I know how chaotic it can be at home in the evenings and all the rest. And you know, if people have activities or if people are going out to gyms, for example, like they just might come home and be wrecked, and they don't want to sit and meal prep for hours, you know. So in an ideal world, we'd all be prepared, but I know it's not always the case.
So you do what you can.
Exactly. Yeah.
So coming back then to the kind of mental well-being side of things, Laura, how do you kind of incorporate that side of things into your work with clients? And do you feel it's as important as the physical side?
Absolutely huge. Yeah. So I always say to people, and I'm sure anyone in a kind of, if you're into wellness of any kind, you've probably heard different versions of the pillars of health. So I always go back to the 5, which I would reference, which would be your exercise, your nutrition, your sleep, your hydration, and your stress.
Yeah.
So it's not to say that all 5 have to be perfect. However, if you're training really hard and you're eating quite well and you're trying to hydrate, but your sleep is really bad and you're stressed out of your brains, your training is not going to have the optimal effect because you're not going to recover properly.
Sure.
There is too much stress then coming at the body. And I think, again, particularly as women, we have to be careful that, you know, training, albeit a good type of stress for the body, it is stress for the body.
Yes.
So if we're already really stressed in our life, or again, undereating creates stress. So again, if you're someone who's doing that kind of unintentional undereating and running around all the time and not fueling yourself correctly, there is just an overall buildup of stress. So we have to be really, really careful with that. So when I speak to clients and we look at the breakdown of things, when they've kind of got the hang, you know, they're maybe doing their few workouts, they're getting out for their walks, they're eating okay, all the rest, then I'm like, okay, well, how is sleep and how is our stress? And if they have a really high stress lifestyle, I would look at ways of dealing, you know, simple things like their journaling, or if they love listening to podcasts, I'd say, okay, go out and listen to a podcast after work. If they're hyped up after the day, you know, just to try and decompress. Training will also help that, you know, but if we're at the point where your training is quite intensive or whatever, you also need to look at that kind of overall holistic piece of minding your mind. Otherwise, again, you won't get the recovery you need. So the whole approach is important, and that can be overwhelming for people. But I always say just one thing at a time. You know, you don't look at all these things together because you would overwhelm someone, and it's not realistic for that to all stick at once. So it's just that habit stacking approach of this week we'll work on the workouts. Next week we might look at the food. The week after, how's the sleep? You know, and bit by bit we kind of chip away at all the issues.
Exactly.
And
that's a great book, actually, Atomic Habits.
Yeah.
That guy who he spoke about that. Habit stacking.
It's brilliant because it's just, that's why we kind of, I don't want to say fail at things. That's why we give up on things though, because we try and take on too much. You know, we try and change the world in a day and then it just doesn't happen. So we say, oh, it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know,
and
give
I
up.
think it's also kind of like sticking with the discipline of whatever it is. Because like that, you know, there would be times when I recommend something to a client, like say if it's meditation, like even just like guided meditation, if you say to them, okay, you know, can you commit to 10 minutes? Like there's loads of them, loads of guided meditations on YouTube. Can you commit to 10 minutes? Even a 5-minute one, can you commit to that? You know, but it's actually the consistency piece. And once they start to build momentum and they see the effects, that then will instill, oh, actually, I'm getting the benefit of this. So then they'll increase it to 10 minutes and then increase it again. And that's kind of how, as you say, you know, you stack that habit and you build on it. You know, you build the momentum.
100%. And, you know, I do that with my training. If someone is brand new to my workouts or whatever it is, I would say just do 10 minutes, then build it to 15, then build it to 20. Because like to your point, if you make the time, you find the time, you know, so eventually you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. I could probably squeeze in the 15 now and eventually I could go to 20, you know.
Absolutely.
But yet to launch into something with that length to begin with for someone might be very overwhelming. So just to build on it.
And same, I think, goes for like the discipline around food and whatever the diet part. Actually, I read a quote there which I thought was kind of funny. If it's in your house, it's in your mouth. Which is so true, you know. Because you know, I don't know about you, but I certainly find like if there's stuff there, like you just end up making really poor choices.
And I'm the worst. Like, and I love food, and I actually have a huge appetite. So I eat my husband under the table all the time. And he laughs at me. He's like, "You're not going to eat all that." I'm like, "I certainly am." And I hate wasting food. I just think, you know. So I'd be the first to kind of eat away the food, you know, so like as you say, when it's there in front of you, you are more inclined to eat it. So just making the better choices.
Exactly.
Online shopping, actually, food shopping is a great one for that, because if you're in the supermarket, you're far more inclined to be firing things into the trolley, whereas you can be a lot more conscious with your choices when you're sitting at home. And you're, you know, I often see things in a supermarket like thinking, oh, I'd like to try that looks nice, whereas if you're doing the online shop, you're searching only for the foods you know you need. And they're not popping up in your face. Do you know what I mean? So you're more inclined to just limit the list.
Maybe I'll switch my point of focus, because I'm just always looking at fashion.
I know.
And it's online stuff. So then just, I suppose, as an extension of that then, Laura, like around the whole motivation piece, because that is like, that features hugely in terms of like, you know, even like people will often say to me, like, where do you get the time or the energy or the motivation like to run 5 days a week? But for me, like we were talking about earlier, it's not even about vanity, it's my sanity.
Yeah.
And like, that's actually what keeps me kind of together and feeling sane. And yeah, of course I like to feel good in my clothes.
Yeah.
But like, it's really more about like actually feeling, you know, that I'm kind of processing everything that happened over the course of a day. And it's kind of my time, if you like, to just kind of get out and you know, take in a bit of nature and to just do my own thing.
Headspace.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is.
So it's not, and again, like it's not about motivation. It's just literally become like a non-negotiable. It's a daily non-negotiable. I don't even think about it.
Yeah.
So even when it's in the, you know, thick of winter, I'd still put on my runners because, and if I do even get into that mental battle with myself of, oh, it's too cold or whatever, I literally just think about, okay, how am I going to feel on the other side? When I'm home, I'm having my shower, and I'm able to put on my...
There's no better feeling.
Just, you know, there really isn't.
There's no better feeling. No,
you know.
I get it completely. And I, like you, thankfully, I suppose training has become just part of my life.
Yeah.
Like anything, I get up and I do it. I don't always do it at the same time. Since having kids, I have to be flexible with that, and that's fine. But it is my non-negotiable. But it does take time to get to that point. And I suppose if someone is starting, and it is probably, apart from how to increase protein in the diet, or should I take a protein powder?
I'm not so good on that part.
I know,
Definitely
but
not.
one of the most asked questions I get on Instagram will be, how do you stay so motivated, or how do you stay so consistent? And my answer is always, and it's not what people like to hear or want to hear, but motivation does not come from the sky.
Yes.
You know, it does not come on like the light bulb. And sometimes we do sit and wait for it, nearly like, oh, wait to have that feeling.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Motivation is born from a decision.
From
so
activation.
you have to make the decision that tomorrow I'm making a change. And again, starting small is more realistic, bite-sized approach. So say, okay, I'm not going to say I'm going to go out and do an hour in the gym and a half-hour long run. I'm going to do a 5-minute walk, even a 10-minute walk and a 5-minute workout. And that might seem laughable to someone. You know, they might be like, that's a waste of time. What am I doing? You're doing something. And it's enough to even activate those good, you know, endorphins, the dopamine hit, that you come away from that saying, oh, that wasn't so bad.
Exactly.
And maybe tomorrow I'll do it again, you know?
Yeah.
And then the second layer to after the decision, and I always say to people, is you need to have some kind of plan, because going into it blindly saying next week I'll do better, you know, next week comes and it's, well, what was the better, you know?
Yeah.
So to say to yourself, map it out, even if you're not working with a coach or a PT, to just take pen to paper. And I'm a firm believer in pen to paper. It's a lot more, you know, there's something magical about it versus notes app on the phone. Like taking pen to paper and writing down, on Monday I will go for a 10-minute long walk. You know, on Tuesday I will drink 2 liters of water. On Wednesday I might try a 10-minute workout, even from YouTube, anything, you know. And on Thursday, so it's just, again, not saying that every day you're going to do all the things, but each day you'll try to do one thing.
Yeah.
And having a plan is key. And then I always say to people, whether again it's running for you, resistance training for me, spinning for people, cycling, walking, yoga, it doesn't matter. The plan you stick to is the one you enjoy. So you have to find what you love.
Yeah.
And if you don't love what you're doing, so like if Mary down the road tells you, come to my Pilates class, you love it, and you go and you hate that Pilates class, that's not the thing for you.
Yeah.
Try something else.
Exactly.
You know, and you will find something that sticks, you know. Yeah. And even within gym environments, I too, like, because I love the gym, I just don't have the luxury going at the moment or anymore. I don't know. It might come back to that. But I used to go to classes all the time. And for some reason, you might just resonate better with one trainer than another and enjoy that class more. It's not to say they're any better or worse, but you just enjoy that class more, you know. So that's the one to keep going to. Like, double down on the thing you love, because then you'll do more of it.
Yeah, because it's funny actually, because I'm just thinking back as you're saying that, like, I used to teach classes part-time.
Yeah.
And like that, I even described it in the book as, it was almost like collective mindfulness. Because when people like that, it's kind of amazing actually when a group of people come together and you're both kind of trying to, or you're all like focused towards achieving the same goal. Yeah. And when you finish a really tough class, it's like you've collectively achieved that together. And it really raises the energy in the room. Like, you'd see people coming in from work and they'd be just like, oh God, the last place they want to be. But then they'd be buzzing.
Bounce out the door. Bounce out
an hour later.
And that energy, like, I know my model of training now has flipped to online for the busy humans and convenience and all the rest.
Yeah.
But you cannot beat that energy that comes from a room.
Yeah.
It's palpable.
Yeah, yeah.
You all feel it. And there's something really magic that happens in that
There
environment.
really is.
You know, there is. And I think, so yeah, whatever the method, whether it is the class, doing it at home, you know, maybe someone's self-conscious, they don't want to be in a gym. So like then do it at home in the comfort of your own home where no one's looking at you. Whatever the answer is, like again, once you enjoy it.
Find what works.
I'd say my clients are sick of hearing me say that. The plan you stick to is the one you enjoy. It is, you know.
That's a really good strapline, actually.
Yeah, no, it's the one I always go back to because it's true.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think it is that idea of, you know, that it's what you start and what you kind of build momentum on, you know, that in the initial stage, it's like anything, when you start anything new, you know, it's going to be difficult for the first while.
Yeah.
But if you stick with it, you know, just give yourself a chance. And every time that your mind kind of kicks back, because it is just your mind kicking back to tell you a different thing or a reason not to do whatever it is.
Exactly.
What am I trying to achieve here?
Yeah.
You know, what is it that I want to gain from this experience? And it doesn't even have to be a goal. It can just be, I know that this relaxes me. I know I feel less anxious when I train. I feel, you know, more in control of my emotions or whatever the case is. Yeah.
And I'd actually, just to add to that, the last layer, and it's kind of on that thread to that motivation piece, and I do it with my clients as well, you know, is to celebrate the wins. Like we are the pits at saying that week was awful, was a write-off. I did nothing. You know, and I'm really old school. I have literally an Excel spreadsheet that I ask all my clients to fill out every week.
Okay.
And it's tedious and it probably feels very cumbersome to them. But I tell you here now, the ones who do that consistently every week get the best results.
Okay.
Because within that, it's kind of what went well, what didn't, what this, what that. And again, oftentimes they start with horrendous, you know, I was sick or kids were sick or something happened or whatever. Week was a write-off. Then it comes to, but I did drink the water but I did get 2 workouts in and I did do this. So then I'm going back to them and I'm saying, well, hang on now, you didn't do so bad. And if this was 6 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, you know, would you have done any of that? So let's talk about all that good stuff.
Exactly.
And then they're kind of, oh yeah, I did do that.
Yeah.
You know, because when we're so hard on ourselves, we can derail motivation and not want to continue. Whereas when we realize, oh God, I actually did do something good there, we then want to kind of lean into that more.
Yeah. So it's to commend yourself on the things that you're actually doing well rather than focusing on the negative stuff.
Yeah. Like I'm not the PT that will scream and shout at you and tell you you've done bad things. And, you know, I'm the one to just be probably wildly understanding.
That's how you get the best out of people, Laura.
It is, because they have to see it in themselves too. And, you know, and I see oftentimes clients come to me when they have been to someone in the past who maybe has been a bit too strict and stringent. And that works for some. It's not, you know, dissing that format at all. But for some, it doesn't work. And then they just need a slightly more understanding approach. So, yeah, it's funny.
So what happens, we say, when you're working with people, Laura, who only respond to that like very softly approach, but you kind of need to sort of, you know, deliver. Kind of let them know.
Like there's a fine line. So there is, of course, a point where also I have to do my job. You know? So I might then set, like, again, bring it back to basics. So if someone has maybe for weeks and weeks and weeks maybe not filled out the form or done nothing and they're kind of like, no, I didn't, you know, then I'd say, right, we need to just make a start on something here. So what's a basic thing we can do? And then I might set them just one simple task for the week ahead, which is just get out for a 10-minute walk. Or get out for a 20-minute walk, you know. And I'd actually then say, scrap the workouts, forget the food, back to basics here. We need a reset. So it's just, again, then back to that habit stacking approach and starting from scratch. And sometimes it might take that, you know, because it's, again, life is life and things happen, you know.
And I suppose, like, people need to be challenged around, well, what is your commitment? Like, do you have a commitment to change? Because oftentimes people, like, if they don't have that commitment, there'll be continuous resistance. And no matter what you suggest, like I always say to people, like, the work happens in between sessions. It's not about me sitting, you know, I can sit here all day and listen to how many obstacles got in the way of you achieving whatever it was. But actually, it's yourself who suffers at the end of it, you know. So that's why it's about kind of really looking at your own goals, your own objectives. What life changes do you want to make? It's not about impressing me as a psychologist or yourself, Laura, as a personal trainer. It's about, you know, well, what do I want from life?
Exactly.
And what do I want to get from my days, and my life experience?
Yeah, and that's why bringing it back to the original goal or the why. So I would ask everyone in their consultation form, what's your goal? So what's the why? What's the reason you're doing this? And that can be eye-opening, like, again, we're so hard on ourselves and people are very vulnerable with that question and they're very honest, which I really appreciate. And it can be as simple as I want to lose 10 pounds, or it can be as big as I want to be fitter for my kids. I don't, I want to be able to run after them. I hate myself. I hate looking in the mirror, and I actually get sad when I read those ones because I just think, God, how did it get to this? That we're so mean to ourselves. But that is where you bring it back to that, because it's like, well, here's why you started. And to your, as you say, if you don't make the change, you're never going to get away from feeling like that, So yeah, people have to be accountable as well, and they have to want it, and they have to be willing to make a change.
Exactly. So I suppose, and kind of as an extension of that, does anything kind of specific come to your own mind in terms of where you've noticed, either in your own life, Laura, or with your clients, where you've noticed the huge impact? Because I'm always stressing it to my own clients. I'm always talking about the benefits of exercise. It really is one of the most potent antidepressants of all, and it's free. I'm always saying it to people, it's free. So just do whatever you need to do. But from your own experience, have you noticed, with particular clients or even in your own life, the impact of physical activity on mood, on anxiety levels, on stress levels?
Yeah, big time. So this is the whole reason I got into training. So 15 years ago, I'm 36 now. When I was 21, my parents separated, and that was I always say whenever I reference that, I'm always like, it was a shit show, and it was crazy. And I think it was just so crazy because us as a family unit, we were always very, normal. Everything was grand, and it was very out of left field. So this, no one saw this coming. It literally happened overnight, and we were all just, I suppose there was just months of chaos then, and I have two brothers, one older, one younger. And we all just, I think we all just went a bit mad, really. No one knew how to handle the situation. And I think the unusual thing is, and it's funny, I sometimes see small kids whose parents have separated, and this might sound bonkers to admit, I'm nearly envious of them, because I think, God, you can just settle into this now. This is your new normal. Not to say that it does not have an impact on them, or it mightn't have an effect of a different kind. And of course, everyone's situation is so different. But I've seen that before, where it's sort of, that's just life for them now. Whereas I think it sort of was such a shocking and upsetting thing, because we were like, wow.
And for that time as well.
We were this is sort of a whole life that's now just disintegrated overnight. And then I suppose you're adults, so your parents are telling you lots of things, and you're let in on lots of, you sort of become part of the situation. So it's all very we were all very entangled in it. So during that time, I was still living at home in Dublin, and I had an amazing friend of mine, Elaine. She just knew, she knew what was going on. It was like the trenches, and she could see me just, I suppose, really down, really just high anxiety. And she was like, I think you should come to the gym with me. And I was never, I never played sports in school. I was not the sporty kid. I was far from it, And I remember saying to her, I was like, absolutely no way. She's like, I'm not going to that gym with you. She's like, I really think it would do you the world of good. So she brought me to this circuit class that I went to, basically kicking and screaming, and I did it, and it was so hard. It was horrible. It was so hard, and I remember leaving that night being like, I'm never going to that again. That was awful. But it was in the day after, and probably the second day after, when the DOMs hit in, I had the muscle aches and pains. And then I actually realised, wow, I actually feel good after that. And I haven't felt like this in a while, And I thought, okay, I need more of that. So I became addicted to that class. It was so funny. The owner used to say, geez, Laura, you're really getting your money's worth out of this place. Because I was there every night of the week. Because I was like, this is keeping me going.
It kept you sane.
It was my coping mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was like, once I realised that, I leaned heavily on it. And I probably did get a bit kind of, I have to get my workout in. I have to get my workout in. Because that was, otherwise I felt a bit I think what it is that when something, whether it's parents separating,
Control.
a death, whatever it is, whatever's going on in your life, when something traumatic happens, everything's out of control. So you can control that 1 hour or whatever it is you're choosing to do. And I liked that feeling, so it definitely did keep me sane. And I always bring it back to that. And I say to someone all the time, like, if you can just train for how you feel, forget the aesthetic. If you get an aesthetic benefit, fantastic.
Yeah.
Let that not be the driving force. And of course, for some people it is, and that's okay too. I'm not going to turn them away at the door. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you can just lean into how you feel.
Exactly.
Then all the other stuff is like a positive knock on, a byproduct of, but you will, there's no better feeling. Yeah.
And brilliant that you didn't go in the other direction. Like that you actually latched onto something really positive and really healthy. Because for a lot of people, and put myself into that category, if something happens like that in the family, that it can lead you in a different direction. I think that was a really good obsession. It did become an obsession. It was a good one.
It was an addiction of a good kind, I suppose. But so it definitely carried me through. And then like that, I just continued training thereafter. And thankfully, you asked, have I seen it in my life or any clients? I get the loveliest feedback and the loveliest stories. And I always, like, there was, sometimes you get emails. I got this amazing email once from a client, and I wouldn't even obviously go into any detail, so personal, but like, she just had this amazing, I think, life awakening after doing her training. And it wasn't because I did anything so profound. It was just because she realised the positive benefits and felt all those good things. And you'd be in tears reading the stuff to you sometimes, because it's just like, whoa, like I know exactly how that feels. And the fact that I've been able to help you do that. And then like at the end of plans, clients would often say, oh, thank you so much, and this and that. And I'm like, but that's all good and well, but all I did was give you the tools. I showed you the way. Like, they do it for themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's the point. And I just get so proud of them then when they do, because they did it for themselves, and it's like, it's an honour to be part of that journey. But I haven't done it, they did.
Exactly. And that it is, I suppose it's important as well to, stress the fact that, like, the correlation between, benefits to mental health and physical activity are replicated like so many times over in the research. And that, in fact, I was only looking at the British Medical Journal, I think it was, during the week. And there was a study only done last year. And like that, it was showing walking, jogging, yoga and strength training came out as being kind of the top activities.
Wow.
When done at an intense level, actually, that seemed to have a significance as well in the study. And again, that it had the equivalence of a mild antidepressant, So, and again, it's not to, diss in any way. Many people, hugely, they wouldn't be where they're at in terms of, if they take a daily antidepressant or whatever.
Of course.
And there are other studies which support, exercise plus an antidepressant plus, attending a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a counsellor, that you get kind of a triple benefit, So I suppose it comes back to that whole point of finding the balance of what works in your life, what fits in with your schedule, and sticking to that, and that, but to know that, these aren't just kind of ideas that we're coming up with today. It's actually backed by very solid scientific evidence that the effects of exercise are absolutely proven, and they really work when it comes to our mental health.
It's incredible. It really is.
Speaking about strength training, Laura, as women, we're often still afraid of, strength training, and, oh my God, I don't want to, build big muscles or whatever. That's actually really old hat.
Yeah.
So I wanted you to talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure you hear it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I suppose the importance as well of strength training as we get older.
Absolutely. Like, it's so, it's not something that I just enjoy and kind of recommend to people. It's something we actually all need to be doing. Medically, we need to be working on our muscles. So as we all age, we suffer muscle atrophy. So our muscles start to sadly wear away and disappear. And if we're not building them back up and preventing that from happening as best we can, you put yourself at more risk of your bones, your joints,
Osteoporosis,
osteopenia, and really and truly, like, things slow down. So as we age as well, you know, our metabolism slows, hormone changes take hold. But if we're building lean muscle mass again, that speeds up our metabolism. So you burn more calories while at rest. So again, if someone's ever feeling that kind of sluggish, slow thing, it's like, well, get the muscles moving. People often have said, yes, I don't want to get bulky, or I'm scared of lifting weights, or, oh, I need to lose weight before I tone up. I did a reel, I think, on that recently, because I think that's a funny one. And it's probably something I believed years and years ago, that you kind of need to do cardio and lose weight, quote unquote weight, before you tone up. But actually, in building lean muscle mass, it's the most efficient way to do it.
Yes.
Because of that whole aspect of kind of speeding up your metabolism while at rest. And people can be, I suppose there's a misconception during your training, if you wear any kind of fitness wearable like an Apple Watch, or if you track your training with a Whoop, something like that, you don't burn a lot of calories when you're strength training. Always. You can, depending on the length of the session, etc. But oftentimes you won't, versus a run or a walk, you know, where you would burn maybe 300 or 400 calories in a session. So people are like, oh, I didn't get anything out of that.
Yeah.
But actually what's happening is, in the cardio session, you're burning the calories there and then in the moment. But there's not a huge amount happening
afterwards.
A little bit, but not a huge amount.
Yeah.
Now you've worked on your cardiovascular health, which is important. But in strength training, you're working on your cardiovascular health, your lean muscle mass, all the rest. You might only burn 100 calories in a session, but afterwards you're going to speed up that metabolism. Burn more calories while at rest. So it is just so important. And because of you know, perimenopause and menopause and all the hormonal changes we go through, we are at risk of all those horrible things as women. So the osteoporosis being the main one. So to keep that lean muscle mass strong is so important. You know, it really is.
And it's also, as far as if I again think to my research, that it actually builds brain neurons in the brain, additional neurons in the brain.
Yeah.
And obviously that then has an impact on brain health.
Yes,
which,
exactly.
you know, of course, you know, as I was chatting about earlier, like, that's super important to all of us.
I know.
So like, it has all the different benefits.
It does, it does. And like that, just again, as we age, it's like, for, as you say, for your muscle, or for your muscles, your brain and your heart, like your heart is a muscle, your brain is a muscle, so it's all having more lean muscle mass in the body is just more beneficial. No, it's so important.
And then it lowers cortisol, which in turn lowers stress, all of that, and it reduces inflammation hugely.
And I just think, from a preventative measure, you know, I think we should all be looking, as we age, of prevention instead of patching up issues as they arise. And if we can get ahead of that, and as we age, we know there could be more risks of, you know, falls or breaking. We all hear that story of like elderly people who might have had a fall and then they break things. But again, it's protecting your skeleton, your bones, your joints. And if we can do that in earlier life, it's going to be easier to maintain.
Exactly.
Instead of, now you can start strength training at any age. The sooner you do it, the easier it is to maintain.
Okay. And because I'm just thinking, like, I'm not really the best for strength training, but I do body resistance work. So like after my run, I'll come in and I'll do some body. Is that, it's probably not as good as...
No, it would be. Like, it's still, you're still contracting the muscles, you're still engaging them, you're still kind of waking them up, if you like. But to build on them, you do need to be lifting weights. I mean, you could with body weight. You don't want to be doing very high reps and sets of things, or get something even just like a resistance band involved. Really powerful tool, actually, and very underestimated. But, you know, a resistance band would just be enough to add a little bit more. You know, with strength training, the key is a concept called progressive overload, which is just constantly increasing the intensity of the work over time. And you can do that by introducing more weight or more reps or sets. Brilliant. So, you know, if it was body weight and you were coming in doing, just say, for example, 10 squats and 20 lunges, do 15 squats and maybe 25 lunges or 30 lunges, whatever way, to make it even. But, you know, that's the concept. So just making it harder. But even in a gym environment, Dee, we're all going to hit our threshold with weights. You know, I will only ever be as strong as I, you know, even no matter how much I'm building on it, I mightn't ever be able to pick up the heaviest weights on the rack. So you might always have to come back to that kind of building on reps or steps concept eventually, you know, but definitely having some weights to hand would be good.
Yeah. Okay.
But start small, never going too heavy
Great.
to start. Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, what are your thoughts on, because there's been lots of, in fact, I was listening to a podcast recently on, I love that one, Diary of a CEO.
I love that one. Yeah.
But he had a lady called Dr. Mindy Peltz, I think was her name. And she's an expert in intermittent fasting. And even in terms of how it relates to our cycle, you know, a menstrual cycle. What are your thoughts around, because she is obviously she's an expert in the field and like is a huge proponent of doing it all really safely, but she had a lot of really interesting stuff. Like she was saying that, you know, it's one of the fastest ways to increase stem cell production in the body. And when we increase our stem cells, apparently, throughout the body, that then increases our ability to repair, you know, and restore damaged cells. So, for example, like she was saying, you know, if you've a cold and you've thrown antibiotics at it, you've, you know, whatever, stayed in bed for 3 days, done all of those things and nothing is working, and you're still, try fasting. And she said, you know, that, like, sure, she's had so many patients apparently who like that. She said that 72 hours apparently is the optimal time. Now, I can't imagine fasting for 72 hours.
I can't imagine fasting for 7. Never mind 72.
Well, I've done some of those, you know, like the 24-hour goal or 48-hour for charity, but I certainly have never done a 72-hour. But anyway, but like, what I'm saying is, I suppose there seems to be very solid evidence to suggest the benefits of intermittent fasting when it's done properly and when it's medically supervised.
Yeah. I think, so there's different pieces of research, and I've not listened to that recent podcast, or I don't know how recent her data was, but there is a piece of research around that it wouldn't be highly recommended for women pre-menopause. It is stressful on the body. So whilst it might have all those positive effects, you're talking about stem cells and everything else, in the moment, like if you wake up in the morning, our cortisol is heightened as we awake. And if we don't try and dampen that down, it can stay heightened to a level that we don't like. And, you know, that helps throw hormones out of whack, which we don't want. We always want to try and keep our hormones nice and balanced. So in that sense, I wouldn't overly recommend it. And then again, it's just, when you say it's in a controlled environment, like, that's good. My fear with intermittent fasting often as well is that it leads to that undereating thing, you know.
Or binging.
This is it, you know. So like because obviously intermittent fasting, you're only eating within a certain window. So typically, even just time-wise, you don't have time to eat enough calories for your particular needs. And, you know, I think people forget that there is a baseline number of calories that we all need just to simply exist. You know, and that's the danger area. And that's what we fall into more often than not. So that's what intermittent fasting can lead to. And I don't love that.
Okay.
But again, if you're postmenopausal and it's working for you and you feel it is just working with your lifestyle and suits what you're doing, then it's no harm. But I would say if you're toying with it, it's better to do your fast in the evening as opposed to the morning. So cut off your eating time at 5 or 6 o'clock and then fast through the night when we all need to rest and digest anyway. And then in the morning, try and break the fast within the first hour upon waking. That would be better. But again, it depends on life stages and things like that.
Well, it's just very topical.
It is.
So,
it is.
You know, and
I would just be more like, eat when you're hungry.
Well, that's actually leads me to my next point, Laura, which is the whole idea, because I'm a huge proponent of intuitive eating, and I think it works really well, and it actually. It makes you more aware of your body so that you don't unconsciously, like that, pick up food, like pick up snacks when you're not hungry, because you have a heightened awareness around like when you actually are genuinely hungry, you know. So I would say I'm an intuitive eater. It's
a brilliant way to be. And, you know, I think to get to that point is the sweet spot, because we should all be able to just listen to our bodies and know when we're hungry or not. Now, the only other thing is, again, if someone was intermittent fasting and then they decide, oh, now I'm going to intuitively eat. If you've been fasting for a long time or like that, under eating on food, you likely will have dampened down your metabolism and not have the hunger cues that you should have.
Okay.
So oftentimes if a client comes to me and they have been under eating and then we naturally increase calories, and that's where the magic happens, by the way, then suddenly they're like, oh my gosh, now the weight loss is happening and things are moving, because, which seems so counterproductive, like counterintuitive, because it's more calories. But if they've been in that under eating zone, it's exactly what they need to get things moving again.
Okay.
They then will say, oh, I'm actually hungry now when I wake up. And I'm like, that's a good thing though. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean your hunger is going to just increasing for the rest of time. It's just getting you back to a point of kind of homeostasis and your body functioning optimally as it should.
Yeah.
So it's not always good when the hunger cues are dampened down. So yes, I love intuitive eating, but it's just, I suppose, to make sure you're not coming off something really extreme before you flip to that.
Exactly.
Because you want to maybe just look at the overall picture and make sure you are getting enough total nutrition throughout the day. That's, we always talk about calories, but really it's about getting the nutrition your body needs to function optimally.
Yeah. And I think as well, I suppose when you're doing a lot of work in terms of conscious awareness, it just seems like, I suppose it was a natural kind of movement for me to get out of the mindset of, have to have whatever X number of meals per day.
Yeah.
It's actually more around, because for example, I'm not really a morning person.
Yeah.
I don't really enjoy breakfast that's why it's easier for me to just eat something small, like that approach to breakfast bar or something at 11 o'clock. It would never be first thing, because I just don't.
No, and a lot of people will be like that. And I'd even just say to them, a lot of people actually would ask the question, is fasted training bad? And no, it's not. But like, it just kind of, again, heightens stress in the body. And I think if someone is going into specifically a resistance training session, so your strength training, trying just to have even like half a banana before you do. So it can be hard to stomach a big meal before training if you're doing it early. So just something small, just enough to fire up your body, your metabolism, get a little bit of carb on board. And then it's enough to kind of get you through the session more. You'll get more bang for your buck, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Just in terms of, before I come to the last question, are there any kind of new little projects that you might like to mention?
Yes. So there's a few things coming up. So I'm working on a really nice collaboration with the artist Ciara O'Neill.
Fantastic.
And I'm hoping by the time this is out, I'll be able to say what it is.
Yeah.
Where myself and Ciara are actually doing a fitness mat together.
Amazing.
Which is, we're very excited about.
Yeah.
So I had the idea that I wanted to do a mat years ago, because the model of my training that I do mostly now is at home.
Yeah.
I often say to people, the only piece of equipment you really need to get moving at home is your mat.
That.
And actually, you don't even need a mat. Like, you can just do it on your carpet or a rug. But there's something quite kind of ceremonial about rolling the mat out. It's like going
the visual part,
to the gym.
I love it.
Yeah, and I just, to me even, I walk into there's like our back room in the house, let's say, and once I roll the mat out, in my mind it's like showtime. You know, it's like we're walking into a gym. So, because it can be hard in a home environment to separate that space, and we don't all have a separate space. Like, I'm doing it in a living room. You know, so I roll them at it, and that's my thing. And then I had this idea about, I don't know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and there is some lovely, colourful yoga mats on the market and things like that. And I thought, well, God, if I ever did a mat, I wouldn't want it to be a boring mat. I'd want it to be a lovely, bright, colourful one.
An inspiring mat.
Yeah, and Ciara lives in Tuam, which is where I'm living now, and I've gotten to know her over the last year and a half, and it just kind of came to be. So we're very excited about that.
Yeah.
So, they'll be launching in the next couple of weeks.
Because I'm a huge believer, I'm like very visual anyway, but like I'm a huge believer in your environment and how much it affects, again, back to the mental space, how it affects your how you think, your emotions, everything. Like, our environment is so important.
Huge,
so it makes perfect sense that if you're going to spend a lot of time on your mat, that you actually like to look at that mat.
Yeah, exactly. That it's fun and colourful and bright. And it's, if you know her work anyway, it's like, it's
she's
totally,
fabulous.
and it's very cool.
Fabulous.
She's put all her key elements. This is a brand new design she's done.
Amazing.
And it's all her kind of key bits into
very
that.
cool,
So,
actually. Very cool idea. I wish you the best with that.
Yeah, thank you.
So final question. Well, it's more actually, I always leave the last thought with the guest, Laura. And it's really, I suppose, for anybody struggling out there, whether it's that they're struggling with their weight, struggling with their mental health, struggling to find the time to, make any sort of time for themselves in between whatever it is that they have going on in their lives, or if they have a body-related concern. just anybody who's struggling in that arena that you see a lot of, I suppose, what would you say to them today?
I would say that there is always a way forward. Always. And I think that is what people can get stuck on. You know, I often have clients come to me in that menopause phase and, you know, suddenly everything has changed. I used to just walk and I used to eat whatever. And now I'm doing all of those same things. However, I'm finding weight in my midsection. My body's changing. I don't like it. I feel like it's out of control. But you can fix that. We just need to look at a new way of doing things. So, you know, people... There's always a path forward. It's just about finding the right way. And I think if you are someone who's feeling that stuck and there's something really bothering you about yourself, like, why live that way? Like, you can make a change. It's just maybe finding the right person to guide you. And it doesn't have to be me. It can be anyone. But I do think if you're struggling that much, it is worth reaching out to someone for just a guiding light. Like, because it's easy when you know how, you know, but when you don't know how, and when you don't have someone pointing you in the right direction, but like, where do you even start? And it can be really overwhelming. And especially in the health and wellness space, there's so much information there now, and it's all positive, good information, but it can be confusing, you know?
Absolutely.
And like that, we can be influenced by the people around us and the classes they're doing or what they're doing, or if someone's intermittent fasting or if they're not. But it doesn't mean it's your approach. So it's just working with someone to find that way forward and just have a little kind of helping hand for a while, and then you'll realise it works, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's really solid advice. And as well, I suppose, just even to add to that if somebody is in a particularly chronic state in terms of their mental health, you know, if they are really being impacted, particularly when it comes to like body related issues, your first port of call is always your GP.
100%. Yeah.
But
100%.
There are, as you say, Laura, there are lots of experts in different fields, but they can come afterwards.
Exactly.
But if it is kind of an immediate concern, then that needs to kind of be where...
Definitely. And that's it. Like, just no matter how stuck someone feels, there is a way out of it. You know what I mean? Like, there is. And I think we can forget that when you're in the trenches.
In the thick of it.
100%. You feel like, oh, that's it. But it's not. It doesn't have to be.
Exactly. Fantastic. Laura, it's been absolutely lovely having you on the podcast. And thank you so much for joining me. And dying to see this yoga mat. I'll certainly be keeping an eye out. Where can people find you?
So mainly online on Instagram at Laura Burke Fitness, and I do have a website now, which is lauraburkefitness.com. That's where the mats will be sold from as well. But Instagram is the main place.
Fantastic.
I'm very bad at my messages at the moment, but I'm trying. I'm trying. Yeah.
Your content is lovely and really informative, and as I say, it's always very kind of it's not sugar coated, which I think people really relate to. You know, I think it's very real and very genuine.
A mixed bag on my page.
Yeah, no, and as I said, and
you never know what's coming.
Some fantastic recipes that even I can make. So that's always a good sign.
Yeah.
So Laura Burke, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.